Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Author by Flying Alone. Audio novels by Novelist. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 136, Egg. A glutton actually forgot to eat. That was equivalent to the possibility of the sun rising from the west. Ling Han's first thought was that there was definitely something off with the little girl. Something must have happened. She had just eaten a portion of the godly medicine yesterday, and based on her current cultivation level of mere body refining tier, such a nutritious kind of medicine must have been too powerful for her. Ling Han went to the little girl's room. At first, she slept beside Ling Han, but according to Lu Yutong, even if Hu Niu was still very small, she was still a girl, so she had cleaned up a room for her. When he entered the room and his eyes swept over it, he instantly got a shock. Because there was absolutely no sign of the little girl. Instead of a little girl, there was an egg on the bed. That's right. It was an egg, and it was an extremely big one too. It was wide enough to fit in a man's arms, and about as tall as half the average height of a man. The egg was as white as snow, but there were multiple golden patterns covering the entire egg. Ling Han was dumbstruck with shock. Even if the little girl went through a complete transformation and became a young beautiful fairy, he would be able to accept the reality after experiencing a slight shock. But a living human being actually transformed into an egg, what could this mean? He did not have any doubt that Hu Niu was currently inside this huge egg, because there was no disturbance to the restriction he had set up. Obviously, no one had entered or left the area. Hu Niu's origins were extremely strange in the first place, after all. She could increase her cultivation level by consuming large amounts of food, which was a very shocking thing. Thus, though the effects of the godly medicine were unbelievably powerful, it was not impossible for the little girl to refine it, and this was also why Ling Han had not been overly worried the day before. But a hen became a duck, and a little girl became an egg. This was extremely bizarre. Ling Han approached the egg. He began observing it, but could not find any clues from his observation. He stretched out his hand and placed it on the egg. He discovered something very surprising. The egg was emanating high heat, as if it was about to burn up at any moment. That was indeed very possible. He picked up the egg and placed it on the floor to avoid the whole courtyard turning into ashes if it did start burning up. Where did this little girl actually come from? Ling Han was getting more and more curious. In his last life, he had stood at the peak of martial arts and had ventured to a considerable number of ancient historical sites, as well as had a considerable understanding of the various races with special constitutions. Yet, he had never heard of any race that could increase their cultivation level simply through consuming food, and could even transform into an egg. He did not dare to break open the egg to check up on Hu Niu either. Although he had never seen such a thing, but he could refer to birds and knew that it was necessary for chicks to break open their eggs on their own. If he cracked the egg open, then that would definitely be an impatient move, and only cause harm to Hu Niu. He had just been reborn not too long ago, yet he had actually encountered so many bizarre events. Thankfully, he had a healthy heart, or he would have already had a heart attack from a series of so many shocks. Forget it. From the looks of it, it's quite peaceful, so the little girl should be fine. Then, I'll just let her continue incubating. When he said the word incubating, he could not help but show a weird expression on his face. Every morning after waking up, he would go seek Mo Gao out for a discussion on the art of the sword. This had become his daily habit. Because he had been away the last few days, he could not join Mo Gao for a discussion, but now that he was back, he naturally went to Mo Jie's courtyard. The two of them discussed the art of the sword while simultaneously verifying each other's standpoints, so they both improved drastically. In less than 3 days, I should be able to break through. Tomorrow, I will be entering seclusion, Mo Gao announced suddenly. Ling Han was at first stunned, then he raised his clasped hands in Mo Jie's direction and said, "My congratulations to you, Teacher Mo." This sword maniac was a genius in the first place. However, he had fixed his target too high. placing his aim directly on the sword heart and thus causing his cultivation to stagnate for these 10+ years. In other words, any other person needed only get 10 marks to advance one level. But Mo Gao wanted to get 1,000 marks and directly advance 100 levels. As a result, he was naturally stuck where he had begun. However, after his many discussions with Ling Han, the grand door of sword arts that had only opened a single sliver to Mo Gao was now completely wide open, and he had all of a sudden attained a drastic improvement. As the saying goes, good preparation is the key to success. Thus, he had attained the comprehension he needed to break through in this short period of time. Ling Han did not feel anything was strange about this. When compared with the difficulty of forming sword heart, breaking through to gushing spring tear was a piece of cake. This sword maniac had finally found his way, and at least before spiritual infant tier, he would not encounter any bottlenecks in his cultivation. He could completely depend on his comprehension of the concept of sword heart, and had boundless prospects ahead of him. Ling Han was happy for him as well. He had secretly decided that once this teacher of his had reached spiritual pedestal tier, he would teach him a cultivation technique. Since all the cultivation techniques in Rain Country were at most only level 5, there was no way to peek into the mysteries of Flower Blossom tier. Otherwise, there would have at least popped up 1 or 2 geniuses in the 8 great clans that managed to break through to Flower Blossom tier after so many years, right? He did not know what fateful encounter the Qi clan had come across that allowed them to possess a powerful warrior of Flower Blossom tier, which secured their place as ruler of this country. Could it be the power of the nation? Ling Han had never been an emperor before, so he was not very familiar with the concept, but when he recalled that in the 9 nations of the desolate north, only the imperial clan had a powerful warrior of Flower Blossom tier to oversee things, then it should be related to being the ruler of a nation. Before this, Ling Han only knew that stimulating the power of the nation could increase one's battle prowess, like Qi Yongyi. He was only the son of a king, and so could only stimulate the power of a single city, but his Son of Heaven Fist technique was still very powerful. If the ruler of a nation used the Son of Heaven Fist technique to stimulate the power of an entire nation, then that would definitely be far more powerful. But could the power of the nation also increase one's cultivation level, allowing one to break through to Flower Blossom tier, and complete the step of casting off one's mortal body? Ling Han shook his head. Whatever, he didn't need to worry about cultivation techniques anyways. After leaving Mo Jie's place, it was already about noon. Ling Han did not want to cook when it was only him, so he went out of the academy and visited a restaurant to have a meal. He had not been in the imperial city for a very long time, thus he would pick a different restaurant every time he ate out to try out which restaurant had the best meals. However, it seemed that he was a natural magnet for trouble. He had just finished placing his order and was waiting to be served when he saw a company of 4 come upstairs. It was mealtime currently, and this restaurant was obviously very popular because there was no empty seat in sight. Thus, the company of 4 stood at the head of the stairs, casting their eyes all over the place, seemingly looking for an empty table. A waiter approached them and seemed to explain something to them. Yet after a short while, he walked over to Ling Han, and said, "Honorable customer, could you give up your table?" Ling Han frowned, and asked, "Why do I have to give up my table?" Honorable customer, do you not know the 4 of them? That's young Master Kong and his friends. They are not to be trifled with. I am asking this for your own good. The waiter looked at Ling Han with a shocked expression, looking like he was very surprised that Ling Han did not know this young Master Kong. No, and I don't intend to know. Ling Han shook his head. Serve the dishes quickly. Perhaps after I have dined for about an hour, I'll leave, and there will be an empty spot by then. About an hour. The waiter gave a bitter smile. If he really had to wait for about an hour, then that young Master Kong would probably have their restaurant torn apart. However, first come first serve. That was the most basic rule. If the restaurant could not even guarantee this, then who would want to come here to dine in future? He could only force himself to speak with young Master Kong. After another while, that young Master Kong and his friends approached Ling Han. Poor fool. Take this 100 silver coins and get lost, young Master Kong commanded, a disdainful expression on his face. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 137, Bastard. A monetary note was tossed onto the table. It was indeed a monetary note worth 100 silver coins. Ling Han gave a faint smile. Since there was someone deliberately giving him money, then he would of course not refuse. He said, "Waiter, did you hear that? Someone is treating me to a meal, so why don't you quickly serve some fine wine and dishes?" Fuck. Young Master Kong was extremely furious. This brat accepted his money and was still not getting lost. He placed his right hand onto the table and threatened, "Poor fool, if you don't want to get beaten up, you'd better get lost quickly." In the imperial city, in a public place, even a prodigal young master like him would not dare to openly threaten the life of someone else. Ling Han turned his head to look left, then turned to look right, and asked, "Where is this barking coming from?" Wong, 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 what an irritating noise. Oh, poochie, sound was heard. Someone could not hold back their laughter at this. The laugh was a crisp sound, having a captivating feeling that could not be described by mere words, and instantly caused quite a number of people to turn around to look at the source of the laugh. The one who had laughed was an extremely beautiful young woman, about 23 or 24 years old. Her black hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall, and her features were clearly defined as if they were shaped by a knife. This woman had a very unique bearing. Because she was seated, there was no way to see how shapely her figure was, but when one saw how her breasts were big enough to block one's eyes from continuing to move down the rest of her body, one should know how impressive her figure should be. All of a sudden, everyone was stunned by her beauty. What was even stranger was that such an outstanding beauty had been sitting here for so long, yet they had only realized it now. But they quickly realized the reason why. There was a piece of light muslin on the table of this beauty. Most likely, when she came in, her face was veiled. It was only when she began to eat that she removed her veil, so she did not attract much attention. Moreover, this beauty was definitely not an ordinary person. There were 3 large, sturdy men dressed all in black seated together with her at the same table. They did not have any particular expression on their faces, but it was obvious they were her bodyguards, because only the beauty was holding chopsticks, while the other 3 were sitting very alertly. The reason why they had not been standing behind the beauty was obviously not to attract unnecessary attention. However, their cold expressions and uniform clothing was enough to attract attention. Young Master Kong was also staring at the beauty, and could not help reveal a perverted expression. He asked the beauty, "Beauty, what's your name?" The beauty did not answer, but one of the men in black waved a hand at young Master Kong, as if he was shooing away a fly. Young Master Kong had the feeling like he was about to go crazy. Just now, a young man actually dared to ignore him, and now another person was waving his hand at him to chase him away. What was going on here? Could it be that after a single night, the imperial city was no longer the imperial city he knew? "How dare you be so insolent towards young Master Kong?" One of the friends of young Master Kong stepped out and shouted loudly at that man in black. There was no change in expression on the man's face. He only took out a golden plaque from his robes, and once again made a shooing motion. "Heng, whatever plaque that is, it's useless. Our young Master Kong. Pa." That scoundrel friend was just about to brag about young Master Kong, yet never thought that he would be suddenly given a heavy slap. He looked at young Master Kong in disbelief, because the one who had slapped him was precisely young Master Kong. "If you want to die, don't drag me along with you." Young Master Kong cursed at him furiously, and then turned to the man in black. His expression had instantly become very respectful, and said, "This master, please forgive this Kong Wen Hui for his blindness." Hiss. All the people in the restaurant were astonished. Had this young Master Kong been bewitched or something like that? He had first slapped his own lackey, and was now taking the initiative to apologize. There was only one possibility then. The other group had a far bigger background than the Kong clan, so even the young master of the Kong clan could only bow his head humbly in front of them. The man in black still did not speak, and only waved his hand a third time. This time, young Master Kong dared not disobey. He left with his tail between his legs, and did not even take back the monetary note worth 100 silver coins. He was already scared out of his wits. Everyone could not help but look at that plaque. What kind of identity did that plaque represent that even young Master Kong was scared off by it? "Ah, I remember now," one of the customers exclaimed in surprise, but he immediately used his hands to cover his mouth, a terrified expression appearing on his face. Hey, just tell me quietly, what does that plaque represent?" "That's right, tell us." The man who shouted just now looked over at him, but when he saw that there was no visible reaction from the three men in black, as if they could care less, he said bravely, "They are the palace guards, the Black Cloud Army." All of a sudden, the entire restaurant became completely silent. The words, "Black Cloud Army," seemed to have power by themselves, causing everyone to tremble in fear. And that was exactly the truth of the matter. The Black Cloud Army were the imperial guards of the imperial family, and they were the most elite unit. All the members of this army were elite martial artists. More importantly, they had the power to kill without punishment. In the imperial city, even the spiritual pedestal tier elites of the 8 great clans could not simply murder anyone they disliked. As the saying goes, a country has its laws and a family its rules. However, the Black Cloud Army could do so as long as they thought that a person could possibly become a threat to the safety of the imperial family. Thus, even a person as arrogant as young Master Kong could only run away as fast as he could. Otherwise, if he was killed, he'd have died for nothing. Everyone else became even more curious. Who exactly was this outstandingly beautiful woman that she would have 3 members of the Black Cloud Army stay by her side to protect her? From her looks, she was alluring, voluptuous, and very mature, so she should not be an innocent maiden anymore. Thus, she should not be a princess or something of the sort. Could she be one of the imperial consorts? When they thought about this, everyone immediately cast their eyes elsewhere. This was the Emperor's woman. If anyone dared to look at her for too long, who knows, they might have their eyes removed. Yet why had a woman of the Reign Emperor left the palace? Ling Han swept his eyes over the 3 members of the Black Cloud Army and that beautiful woman, and was slightly surprised. Those 3 members of the Black Cloud Army were only in Gushing Spring tier, yet the beautiful woman was actually in Spiritual Ocean tier. A woman in her early 20s was already in Spiritual Ocean tier. That was really too unbelievable. This woman should have used some kind of medicine to preserve her beauty, and her real age should be at least 27 or 28. Otherwise, she should not be a citizen of Rain Country, but must have come from some major sect outside of Rain Country. That would not be strange then. One by one, the customers all settled their bills and left. To be in the same room as 3 members of the Black Cloud Army that could kill without suffering any kind of punishment, just thinking about it made their hair stand on ends and lose any appetite they might have had. Ling Han's dishes were also served. He began to eat without care. Sounds of music were suddenly heard, and soon footsteps could be heard coming up the stairs. Very soon, the owners of the footsteps had arrived on the 2nd floor. They were an old man and a young girl. The old man had a slightly stooped figure and had a goatee, while his hands held onto a huqin. TLN, huqin, Chinese 2-stringed fiddles, with snakeskin-covered wooden soundbox and bamboo bow with horsehair bowstring. The young girl was dressed in coarse clothing, but her poor attire was unable to hide her shapely figure. She wore no makeup, but her face was refreshingly beautiful and extremely gorgeous. In terms of beauty, she was only slightly inferior when compared to Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan. Jia, the old man found a spot and sat, then began to play his huqin, whereas the young girl began to sing along to the music. Her singing voice was sinuous and melodious, causing anyone who listened to be unknowingly captivated by her voice. Even the 3 members of the Black Cloud Army who had not spoken or smiled at all could not help but show moved expressions and captivated eyes when they heard the naturally beautiful singing voice of the young girl. Ling Han, meanwhile, gave a sigh. Looks like he would not be able to enjoy this meal in peace. He had sensed killing intent. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 138. Assassination. The old man looked up, and when his eyes fell upon the beautiful woman, the music took a different note. The music that had been sinuous like springtime in the month of March, and a young girl that had been declaring words of love to her beloved had become harsh in a single instant, as if announcing the marching of military troops on their way to attack their enemies, resounding with a predatory air. The young girl had also changed. The song she was singing changed, and she sang a song of inciting strength and attack. At the same time, she began to dance as if she was practicing sword techniques, and though there was no sword in her hands, she displayed the grandness of a skilled swordsman. The area she was moving in became wider and wider, and she got nearer and nearer to that beautiful woman. The song resounded, and like an ocean's wave, captured the hearts and minds of those who listened. The only unexpected factor was Ling Han. His divine sense was not only stronger than any normal element-gathering tier martial artist, he also possessed the martial heart of a heaven-tier elite, and was most able to protect his heart and mind. So the real intention was revealed now. The young girl had neared the beautiful woman in her dance when her right hand suddenly waved and a bright sword appeared in her hand, which swept towards the beautiful woman. With this one slash, she looked like a fairy descended from the heavens, too beautiful for words. I already expected it would be you people. It was at this moment that the beautiful woman suddenly slammed her hand onto the table. Pa! And a table made of high-quality rosewood was instantly turned into pieces. The broken pieces of wood shot towards the young girl as if they were arrows shot from a bow, and though the beautiful woman had made her move later, the broken pieces of wood reached the young girl first. Ding! 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 The young girl waved her sword and parried away the pieces of wood. However, it was also at this moment that the three members of the Black Cloud Army came back to themselves. They all wore expressions of shock, because they had reacted much too slowly. If they had been the targets of the young girl's assassination plot, then they would have died from their carelessness. How dare you! The three men shouted furiously in unison as they all drew their respective weapons and charged at the young girl. Who cares if you are an outstandingly beautiful woman? Anyone who dared to make a move against an imperial consort would have committed a crime of high treason and would have all their relatives executed with them as punishment. Three smelly bugs. The young girl's eyes turned cold, her sword swept forward in an arc, and instantly, 3 flashes of sword chi shot out. What? The 3 members of the Black Cloud Army gasped in shock. 3 flashes of sword chi meant that this young girl was already in the ranks of rulers. The young girl was obviously a high-level gushing spring-tier elite, and the terrifying power of her sword chi was not something that could be withstood by these 3 men. As the sword chi danced unhindered, poo, 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 a wound appeared on the chests of the 3 men, and blood gushed forth. They were killed in a single instant. The young girl gave a light whistle, and continued to attack the beautiful woman. Murder. Those few customers who had remained in the restaurant finally came back to reality, and they all shouted in shock as they all fled downstairs. Little sister, so you people are the ones who used the falling flower command to lure this big sister out. The beautiful woman giggled. She did not stand up, but simply used her bare hands to defend herself and solidly blocked the young girl's sharp blade. When one looked closely, there was a pale light wrapped around both her hands. Every time her hands clashed with the sword, the light would brighten and block any damage that could possibly be inflicted by the sharp blade. The young girl did not respond. She simply increased the power of her attacks, and every slash was swift and fierce. Little sister, which one is your master? The beautiful woman looked very calm. She was in spiritual ocean tier, and was completely dominant over the young girl who was only in gushing spring tier, so she naturally appeared to be completely at ease. Qiyang. The old man who had been playing the huqin by the side stopped playing his music. He pounced and also leaped towards the beautiful woman. He waved his right hand, and a few strings of the huqin flew forwards to coil around the beautiful woman. Ancient thousand silk threads. The beautiful woman narrowed her eyes before smiling softly, and said, "You are not this big sister's type." Big Sister does not like to be tied up by you. If you were a handsome man, then Big Sister would be a little interested. These two people were obviously assassins. There was no change in their expressions when faced with their opponents, flirting. On the other hand, their attacks were quick and forceful, and they moved in well-practiced coordination. However, they were both only in Gushing Spring tier. Even if they were in the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier, how could they be a match against a Spiritual Ocean tier elite? The beautiful woman only slightly increased the effort she was putting into this battle, and it was enough to cause these two people to face danger on all sides. Never thought about it, right? I betrayed and left the Falling Flower Court, yet my cultivation level has broken through to Spiritual Ocean tier. She laughed lightly. Her figure moved lightly, but her attacks became faster and more powerful. If a Spiritual Ocean tier elite became serious, how could mere Gushing Spring tier martial artists stand against her? The two assassins were instantly in dire straits, and looked to be trapped in a very difficult situation. I only need one person to go back and report. The beautiful woman revealed a cold killing intent. Go and tell that bitch, Hua Wu Yue, that when I break through to Spiritual Pedestal tier, that would be the day that bitch has to surrender her head. Her killing intent blazed, and her attacks were even more ruthless. The old man and the young girl exchanged a look before they each stretched out a hand to hold onto each other. Instantly, there was an indescribable power circulating, and there actually appeared an inconceivable increase to their battle prowess, which helped them withstand the beautiful woman's killing moves one after another. Ling Han was astounded as he thought, was this 2 hearts beat as 1? This was a secret technique that could force out 10 times the amount of potential two people had. However, when the technique's effects ended, these two people who had used the technique would experience a setback in their cultivation levels. This technique belonged to the last resort category of martial arts techniques. However, the 2 hearts beat as 1 technique had very strict requirements for its use. The two people who used this technique had to be siblings, but there was such a large gap between the ages of these two people, so how could it be possible that they were siblings? While he was still feeling surprised, the two assassins obviously knew they were no match for the beautiful woman. Only managing to withstand a few attacks from the beautiful woman, they suddenly leaped out the window, fleeing off into the distance. The beautiful woman chased after him and stood by the window, watching the spot the two assassins had vanished at, but made no move to continue her pursuit. The people who had been walking on the streets had heard the window break and they all turned to look up. However, what they saw was an extremely beautiful woman standing from the window. As a light breeze blew, her silken garments were tightly wrapped around her shapely figure, clearly outlining her voluptuous body, and the passers-by could not help but salivate at this sight. This was indeed an extremely captivating beauty. The beautiful woman turned back round and cast a look at Ling Han, and said, "Little brother, you were really quite brave not to flee." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I'm so scared that my legs have become weak. Even if I want to flee, I can't." Giggle. The beautiful woman covered her mouth and laughed. The beauty trembled in her humor, and had an indescribable allure to her. Big Sister is fond of your type, having a sweet mouth for flattery and a good sense of humor. What a pity that Big Sister is already married. Her figure suddenly leaped out the window, completely ignoring the corpses of the 3 members of Black Cloud Army. The most vicious is a woman's heart. Ling Han shivered internally. Just now, that beautiful woman had actually borne killing intent towards him, but for some reason, gave up on her intention. Just having a simple meal and things could become so hair-raising. This really made him lost for words. Ling Han rose up from his seat and left. This had nothing to do with him. He did not have the free time to concern himself with unnecessary matters. This was an area directly under the control of the Emperor, and 3 members of the Black Cloud Army had died, so it was a very serious matter. In mere moments, the whole imperial city was completely on alert. One infantry troop after another was seen patrolling the streets, searching for the location of the 2 assassins. After Ling Han returned to the Huyang Academy and entered his courtyard, his brow immediately creased into a frown. Someone had touched his restriction and had entered his courtyard. Chua! A bright light flashed, and a sword was pointing right at his chest. A beautiful young girl appeared. Don't make any noise, or else I will kill you. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 139. Rookie. This young girl actually happened to be one of the assassins at the restaurant. Ling Han's expression became strange. This was really too much of a coincidence, wasn't it? This young girl was actually hiding at his place. But when he thought about it, Huyang Academy was indeed the best place for them to avoid their pursuers. Moreover, this was the most secluded, desolate corner of Huyang Academy, so it wasn't really too much of a coincidence that this pair of assassins had found their way here. He smiled calmly, and said, I do not like someone pointing their sword at me. Heng, even if you don't like it, you'll have to like it now. The young girl declared a little naively, not showing the slightest bit of sign that she was a cold-blooded assassin. Ling Han stretched out a finger, pressed down on the sword's blade, and said, You have just used 2 hearts beat as 1 technique. Do you even have a single % of your battle prowess left? His physical body had already surpassed the level of body a dead tree, and was nearing the level of body of rock cliff. Even if he was not circulating origin power to increase his defenses, there was no way the sharp blade of the sword was able to wound his finger. He gave a flick of his finger, and the sword immediately swept to another side. This is much better. The corners of his lips turned up into a smile. The young girl could not hold back an expression of surprise, and asked, How did you know we used 2 hearts beat as 1 technique? That isn't some kind of incredible secret technique. Ling Han shook his head. In his last life, he did not have any siblings. Thus, even when he had obtained this technique, he only took one look at it and tossed it aside right after. He only knew the use of this secret technique as well as its drawback, but could not recall its exact details. Heng, even if we only have a single % of our original battle prowess left, it would be more than enough to take care of a mere 6th layer of element gathering tier martial artist like you. The young girl said, unconvinced, and once again raised her sword to point at him. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, If you misbehave, I'll smack your bottom. Scoundrel. A red blush immediately rose up on the pretty face of the young girl, and her sword suddenly shot towards Ling Han in an attack. If this young girl's battle prowess had not dropped, then Ling Han would really have not dared to receive her attack head-on. After all, the 7th layer of gushing spring tier was much stronger than him. But there may not even be 1,000th of her initial battle prowess left, what more a single %. Additionally, he was a freak whose battle prowess allowed him to stand equal with the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. In simpler terms, the result was that he was at an advantage in terms of battle prowess. Peng, peng, peng. A few punches from Ling Han, and the sword was successfully flung out of the young girl's hands. Ding, and the sword was firmly stabbed into the ground, swaying from side to side. Will you only behave after getting your bottom smacked? Ling Han deliberately put on a severe expression. The young girl was so scared that her face had gone pale. Why was she so unlucky? This was her first mission, and it had failed impressively. Moreover, she had only escaped the wolf's den, but had entered into the tiger's lair. Ziu! Another figure flew out. It was the old man, the other assassin. As his hands waved, the threads of the hucken danced, as if they were silk threads, winding towards Ling Han. Old man, though I have respect for the elderly, but if you flaunt your seniority in front of me, I will not be polite either. Ling Han declared as he used his fists to parry the old man's attacks. Due to his powerful defenses and sturdy physical body, those hucken threads that should have been able to cut through metals could do nothing against his bare fists. The young girl also advanced with her sword in hand. The two of them moved in well-practiced coordination, and when they combined forces, their collective battle prowess not only doubled, but increased by 2 to 3 times. However, their battle prowess had suffered a drastic setback, and along with the fact that their opponent was a monster like Ling Han, they were still suppressed to the extent that they couldn't even fight back even if they just joined forces. The two of them could not help but feel extremely astounded. Even if their battle prowess had dropped drastically, if they combined forces, their power should be more than enough to dominate over any ninth layer of element-gathering tier martial artist. Yet this young man in front of them was really monstrously strong. He actually managed to turn the tables on them to suppress them. If you misbehave, then you'll be thrashed. Ling Han's foot kicked out and hit directly on the young girl's bottom, kicking her some distance away before throwing a punch onto the old man's chest, also forcing him to fly off some distance away from him. But after he had thrown this punch, Ling Han's expression became a little strange. There was something off about that feeling. He walked towards the old man who was already lying down on the ground, now only able to moan in pain. Ling Han felt about the old man's face, and suddenly tore off a thin mask with a tear. The old man's appearance changed greatly in that single instant, and actually revealed an angry-looking beautiful young face that looked quite similar with the young girl's face. No wonder. Ling Han finally understood. Just now, he was still feeling curious about how there could be such a large age gap between this pair of brother and sister. Now it looks like the elder brother wasn't the elder brother at all, but an elder sister who had simply disguised herself as an old man. Fletcher. The elder sister shouted in anger, a furious blush on her face, before actually fainting from her rage. Ling Han sighed. He had not deliberately attacked her breast. Who asked this girl to disguise himself as an old man? Sister. After the disguise was exposed, the young girl made no more attempts to gloss things over and immediately called out. Unfortunately, the kick that Ling Han delivered just now was really very heavy. Her bottom felt like it was burning even now. She had just gotten up before falling down to sit on the ground again. How troublesome. Ling Han sighed again. Do you two not have some other place to hide that you must come here to add on to my troubles? The young girl put on an expression as if she had been wronged. If they had known that there was a perverted lecher living here, they wouldn't have come here even if they were beaten to death. Hey, cursing someone in your heart is not a good thing to do, Ling Han said. How did you know? The young girl asked in shock, an adorable expression on her face. With your kind of temperament, you want to be an assassin. Ling Han only felt that the master of these two sisters was really too much of a failure to actually train this kind of assassins. Their master should practically hit himself with a piece of tofu, thus committing suicide. What do you care? The young girl humphed, and ignored him. Watch out, or I will smack your bottom. Ling Han threatened. You dare. The young girl was once again so scared by his threat that her face had turned pale. Usually, she had her elder sister to protect her, but now that her sister was unconscious, she suddenly felt at a loss. You two only know how to give me trouble. Ling Han shook his head. He stretched out a hand, grabbed the collar of the elder sister, and walked over to pick up the younger sister before entering his house. What do you want to do? The younger sister had turned pale from fear. Was this guy going to commit a crime of lust in broad daylight? What do you think? Ling Han asked, deliberately putting on a wicked expression. The younger sister was so scared her eyes rolled in the back of her head, and actually fainted too. I give up. They are like this, and they want to become assassins. Ling Han shook his head. At first, when he saw the well-coordinated movements of these two girls, and how well-practiced they were, he had thought they were experienced assassins. But in the end, they were mere rookies. He tossed the two girls into Hunyu's room. He thought for a while, then moved Hunyu's egg into his own room. Who knows when the little girl would hatch out of her egg? After a short while, the pair of sisters awoke, and when they discovered they were fully dressed and there was nothing off with their appearances, they both felt relieved. Sister, let's take advantage of that guy not being here, and quickly flee, the younger sister said. How do we flee? The elder sister said with a bitter smile. After we used 2 hearts beat as 1, we forced ourselves into another battle. Can you even use origin power now? If we go out now and fall into the hands of those smelly men, I would rather die. But that guy is really bad, always saying that he's going to smack my bottom, the younger sister said, feeling very wronged. That person's eyes look very clear, so I don't think he's that kind of person. The elder sister shook her head. Sister, don't forget that he groped your breast just now. The younger sister pointed out this fact. Stupid girl, don't talk nonsense. I was punched by him. The elder sister quickly argued. What's the difference? The younger sister mumbled. Ling Han had just pushed open the door and entered, and could not stop his face from twitching. This pair of sisters were even more amateurish than he had thought. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 140. The Whole Story. When they saw Ling Han come in, both sisters put on guarded expressions. Just now, they could somehow still have the ability to fight, but now, they were really like fish upon a chopping block, completely at the mercy of others. Ling Han moved a stool closer to them, sat down, and said, "Why don't you tell me your story?" Both girls shook their heads at the same time, and the younger sister even declared stubbornly, "Death is better than being insulted. Just kill us." "All right. Since you two are so determined to die, then I'll give you a hand." Ling Han nodded and stood. The two sisters looked like they were not afraid of death and exposed their necks to receive a killing blow, but their tightly gripped hands betrayed them, who would not be afraid when facing death. Ling Han rubbed his chin, and said, "You two are quite good-looking. To just kill the two of you seems to be too much of a waste." How can you be so untrustworthy?" The two sisters declared angrily, "Kill us quickly." Ling Han could not help being amused, and asked, "So what if I am untrustworthy?" "You won't get a good end," the younger sister said with a pale face. Ling Han laughed loudly, and asked the elder sister, "Bringing along a silly little girl like this is a lot of pressure, isn't it?" You even insulted me." The younger sister only felt extremely wronged. This young man either insulted her, or scared her. He was really too despicable. Moreover, he didn't look much older than herself, yet kept referring to her as a little girl, pretending to be so much more mature. "Tell me your names, or I will smack your bottoms," Ling Han threatened. "Heng, I won't tell," the younger sister declared stubbornly. "I am Lu Feng and she is my younger sister, Lu Ru the elder sister said. "Sister, why did you tell him? We would rather die than submit," the younger sister, Lu Ru declared with a pout. "What about the person you want to kill?" Ling Han asked. "Her name is Zhu Keixin. She used to be a member of our Falling Flower Court, but is now our enemy." This time, Lu Ru snatched the chance to answer first. Since there was no possibility of rather die than submit anymore, then there was no way that an outspoken person like her could hide any secrets. "Why?" Ling Han asked. He truly felt that his curious nature was much too strong. This had nothing to do with him at all. Zhu Keixin used to be the top assassin of our Falling Flower Court, but she actually allied herself with an outsider, charged into our Falling Flower Court, and killed almost all the members of our Falling Flower Court. Although the two of us sisters are all that is left of the Falling Flower Court, we will definitely make this traitor repay with her life. Lu Ru made an impassioned declaration, her head held high. "Pa!" Ling Han flicked her forehead, which caused the young girl to hold onto her head in pain as she looked at Ling Han with murderous eyes. "You tell me," Ling Han turned to look at the elder sister. "We come from Fire Country, and Falling Flower Court is an organization of assassins. Since young, as two sisters were taken in by our Grand Elder as disciples. Zhu Keixin collaborated with the imperial family of Fire Country and practically massacred the entire Falling Flower Court. Elder Huo managed to save the two of us and flee, but her injuries were much too severe. She only managed to last for a few years, and died last year," Lu Feng said. Her explanation was clear and methodical, unlike her younger sister's disorganized explanation. The latter didn't even care if her audience understood her or not. And the reason why Zhu Keixin had committed such crimes was only because she wanted to steal a treasure of the Falling Flower Court, a staying youth pill. After she got it, she made her way to Rain country, and using some unknown methods, actually became an imperial consort of the Rain Emperor, gifted with the honorable name of Consort Yun. We used the token that she had left behind to lure her out, but never thought that after a mere 5 years, that woman actually broke through to spiritual ocean tier, making our plans fail at the final step. Ling Han was astounded. Just for the sake of a staying youth pill, she actually became hostile and cruel enough to destroy the sect that had nurtured her for years. But when he thought about it, there were indeed some women who placed as much importance on their beauty as on their very lives. For these women, they could sacrifice anything as long as they could preserve their beauty. But this Xuanhuan Sin really did have her ways to actually manage to clear her history of bloodshed and murder, and actually become an imperial consort of Rain country. You can rest here and wait for your wounds to recover. When you are recovered, you must immediately leave. Do not drag me into this, he said. Lu Ruer looked extremely surprised, and asked, why are you helping us? Ling Han laughed, and said deliberately, of course, it's because the two of you are so beautiful, so you can pay me back by marrying me in future. Heng. I will not accept you. Lu Ruer immediately declared proudly. Silly girl. Ling Han shook his head. After understanding the whole situation, he had naturally lost the interest in continuing the conversation, so he turned around and left the room. The reason why he was willing to help him was because he was displeased with Xuanhuan Sin. That woman actually bore killing intent towards him, of course he would have to go against her. Although there were another 2 mouths to feed added like this, compared with Xuanhuan's colossal appetite, there was not much difference whether these 2 sisters were here or not. The amount of food consumed would not attract anyone's suspicion. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Ling Han took medicine every day, and so his cultivation advanced very rapidly. However, all medicine had a poisonous component, so even though he had concocted a large amount of alchemical pills, he could only take 1 or 2 pills per day. Otherwise, the natural poison content in these medicines could accumulate in his body and the result would be unthinkable. The Lu sisters recovered very slowly. Using the 2 hearts beat as one technique to force out their potential was harmful to their foundation, and no medicine would be of any help to any wound to a person's foundation. Even if there was, the medicine would at least have to be earth grade and above. Ling Han was not that generous to get some earth grade pills for these 2 sisters. There was a slight change to the egg that Xuanhuan had transformed into. The original white color had turned red, and he could vaguely see a crimson light flickering within, as if the little girl was about to hatch out of the egg soon. Those who had ventured to the site of that ancient battleground also returned one by one. The godly medicine had fled, the spiritual tools had flown off, and they had already gotten whatever they should have gotten. Whatever they didn't get, they had no way to get hold of anyways, so what was the use of continuing to stay there? At night, the 3rd Imperial Prince earnestly invited Ling Han to join him at Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Ling Han had quite a good impression of this Imperial Prince, so he decided to give the latter some face and accept the invitation. The Cherishing Flower Pavilion was the most luxurious money-squandering establishment of the Imperial City. Anyone with any slightest bit of social status would choose to receive guests here, because there was not only food made from valuable ingredients and excellent wine here, but also female attendants who had gone through strict training. These women were all extremely beautiful, and came with various bearings. It could be said that their bearing and beauty completely enabled them to pass themselves off as any princess of the various great clans. This naturally satisfied the hearts of all men who sought novelty as they chased after these female attendants. However, there was too strict a requirement to enter into this Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Even clansmen of minor clans had no right to enter into this place. The establishment would not accept their money to lower the entry requirement. But, the more exclusive it was, the more popular the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was. One could not help but sigh at how well the owner of this establishment could grasp human psychology. The 3rd Imperial Prince did not only invite Ling Han. He also invited a lot of other young elites. He had reserved a courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion for his gathering, proving how very liberal he was with money. Merely the expenses for this one night would be enough for an ordinary family to live their entire lives in comfort. Ling Han strolled and arrived at the entrance of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. There were 2 exquisitely beautiful servant girls standing at the entrance to receive customers. They were tall and slender, and were very high grade in terms of appearance. "Yi, Big Brother Ling," a voice filled with surprise suddenly called out from behind him. Ling Han turned around and saw a young man and woman standing side by side. He could not help but show a smile, and said, "Li Hao, Zhu Yi. It really is you." Li Hao and Zhu Yi both smiled, and quickly approached him. "He, should I be congratulating you for finally winning the maiden's heart?" Ling Han raised his clasped hands in Li Hao's direction, causing this guy to instantly show an expression of embarrassment, but there was no way to hide his joy either. End of the chapter. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao will be read in 5 chapters for every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.